Before we get stuck into today's episode, I want to ask you a quick question. Right now, today, are you in exactly the same place in your practice as you were 12 months ago? Still worried about cash flow, still struggling to fill those diaries, and still struggling to build a great team? Second question, how confident are you that this is actually going to change in 2026? And my third and final question to you is this. How will you feel next year this time if nothing has changed once again and you are still right here where you are today? The same long hours, the same pressure, same sense of carrying it all on your shoulders, all by yourself. I don't know about you, but I did not start my practice only to feel trapped inside of it. And I'm guessing that's true for you. I'm guessing you started your practice for freedom. I'm guessing you started your practice to have an impact, but also to have a life that actually gets better as your business grows. So this is me kicking you off the freaking hamster wheel so that you can stop running in circles. This is me shaking you so you can wake up and note the freaking mud you are currently stuck in, so that you can make an informed decision around what you want your life and your business to look like in 12 months' time. Because the thing is this, you can choose the same old, or you can choose something better. This is up to you. And if you want better, then this is your invitation to check out the Private Practice Success Academy. Doors are now open for the January 2026 intake. At the time of recording this, we still have 6 out of 10 spots available. And spots are limited because these places include one-on-one access to me. In short, the Private Practice Academy is the business school for allied health professionals. In the academy, you will get the right plan for your level of business, no generic cookie-cutter advice. You'll also get all the tools, systems, and resources you need to execute your plan. And best of all, you will get real support from me for the moments you get stuck, for those moments you start doubting yourself, and those moments when you lose momentum. So that you're not guessing, you're not having to Google, and you're not trying to figure it all out alone at 10 p.m. after the kids have finally gone to bed and you have already had a full day of work. This is for private practice owners who are done with, I'll get this sorted next year, who knows that they are capable of more, who are ready to stop hovering in the same place and start moving forward properly in a sustained manner once and for all. Again, this decision is ultimately up to you. But if you are interested in just learning a bit more of what this could look like, then all you need to do is go to the show notes, find my email, which is gerda@private-practice-success.com. Click me an email with the word Academy in the subject line, and I'll send you all the details. It's as easy as that. So reach out and let's get this sorted. Well, hello there, brilliant private practice owner. My name is Gerda Muller, and you are listening to the Private Practice Success Podcast. And this is episode number 59. Today, I want to talk to you about the topic of delivering a 10 out of 10 client session. In other words, an A+ client session. And I'm pretty sure that this topic is going to appeal to each and every one of you, because whether you're a business owner or not, whether you're a solo practice owner or group practice owner, at the end of the day, we are all clinicians by heart, and we all want to deliver that A+, 10 out of 10 client session. Now, for context, I want to preface this by saying that when we look at this first through the business filter, because this is obviously more of a business kind of podcast than a clinical podcast, right? So, for context, business wise, there is this overarching client experience. So, a client, whether it's a potential, current, or past client, there's a client experience that exists. In other words, from them just looking at your social media, making that first call, all of the things, that's the client experience. Then there's what's referred to from a business perspective as the client journey. So once somebody goes, yes, I'm going to now be a client, what is that process they go through? So what we're doing in today's discussion is we're drilling down to the client session, which is only one tiny part of the client journey and of the bigger picture client experience that somebody has with your practice. All right. So we're talking client session. So why is this topic important? So important that I've decided to talk to you about it today. Well, there is many, multiple reasons. So I'm going to share with you the first three that popped into my head. And as you listen to this, you might go, yeah, I agree with those, Gerda. Or if maybe you're listening to it and you're going, no, you have missed something super important, I encourage you to reach out and let me know what that is. Okay, so the three things that really popped into my head in terms of why is it important for us to deliver a 10 out of 10 client experience is the following. And that is to provide a positive experience with the mental health system. Now, as a private practice owner with a private practice, meaning this is a private business, I know that private practice plays a really important role within the general mental health system. Now, if you're listening to this and you're going, but I'm a physio, I don't work in mental health, that's okay. You are part of the allied health system. Super important part of the industry as well. But whether you in allied health or we drill down mental health part of allied health or any other part, you've got a role to play. So there's the public part of the system. There's the NGO, that's the charities and non-government organizations that gets still funded. And then there's us, the private practice. And I see it as a really important part of my responsibility that if somebody comes through our part of the allied health and particularly mental health system that I'm a part of as a business owner, but also as a clinician, because I chose to work in this part of the system, I've got a big responsibility to ensure that each and every client that comes through this part of the system has a great experience. Because I see it as a fundamental part of what my role is as a clinician is to advocate for people to look after their mental health. And I can only do that when I'm also part of the advocacy to reduce the stigma around mental health and around help-seeking behavior, which means that it's really important that when clients come through our doors, that they have a good experience. Because I can tell you when people don't have a good experience, they will be very quick to tell other people about it, to give you a bad Google review. Or if they're not comfortable putting something on a Google review page, they will be telling other people, don't go there. Or if they're not talking about your practice specifically, they're just going to say, psychologists are shit. Been there, tried that, and they didn't help me. It wasn't good. And I don't want that. For every person that has a bad experience, they might tell 5 other people who might be then discouraged from seeking help. That's not what I want. So every client that comes through our doors needs to have a client experience that allows them to go, I'm a very private person. When I speak to somebody and I can see they need help, I'm going to be comfortable enough to say, you know what? I've actually sought help as well. And it really helped me. It was a great experience. It was a helpful experience. So I see it as an important part of our role, not only as private practice owners, but as clinicians, to ensure that every client that comes through our doors has a positive experience with the mental health or the allied health system that you are a part of. That's the first, and for me personally, most important reason why we want to endeavor with each and every client session for that to be a 10 out of 10 client session. Okay, the second important reason is client retention. Now you might be thinking, I know it. That's all about the business, right? No, actually it's not. Because you know what? And again, I'm putting this through my filter of being a psychologist, and dependent on your allied health discipline, I want you to put this through your filter as well. But the way I look at it is this. I know as a psychologist, yes, I can make a big difference in one session with a client. But you know what? With every subsequent session that the client comes in, guess what? I'm having a compounding impact in their life. Because yes, clients can get value from one session, but the value compounds with every session that they come for. Because I might share with them, let's say, a strategy in one session. Then they go home, they try it out. They come back and they go, well, that didn't work. Because sometimes that happens, people. Okay, none of us are perfect. There's a lot of tools in our toolbox, and we in session try and make the best assessment based on what the client is providing and giving and sharing with us right now, what the right tool is for them. But sometimes we might select the wrong tool, and that's okay. That doesn't mean it's not a 10 out of 10 session. It's 10 out of 10 because you actually ask at the next session, was it helpful? And you've created an environment where the client feels comfortable to go, no, it didn't help. You can go, oh, thank you. All right, let's see what went wrong. How did you implement it? Okay, let's try something new, something different. Let's see how that goes. So clients get better over time. It's the compounding improvement. And they only get better if they in session with you. You can only fix what's not working if they at the next appointment. So client retention is incredibly important, because at the end of the day, that's how the client gets compounding value from the service that they are engaging in. So providing a 10 out of 10 client session that leads to client engagement and ultimately client retention, that is good for everybody involved. And then finally, the third reason why providing a 10 out of 10 client session is so important is that it has a direct impact on your brand quality and image. Let that sink in. I know that in our industry, we don't often think about competition, but I can tell you, somebody that works with a lot of practice owners, that there has been a lot of new practices opening up in the market, which is amazing, because for a very, very long time, client demand outstripped supply significantly. But I am seeing that more and more and more people are struggling with filling their appointments, are struggling with their marketing, struggling with getting consistent referrals. And what I will also say is that even when demand was really high, brand quality and image was still super important. It will always be important, especially now that we're going into an era. I should really say we are already in an era where there's a lot more stepped care options. There's a lot more AI. There's a lot more tech platforms providing services within the mental health and allied health arena. So if you want to stand out in that arena that we are now engaging in, you need to ensure that the human interactions that your clients are having with your clinicians are a 10 out of 10 experience. Because I actually love AI. I enjoy tech. I enjoy what it can do from an efficiency and an access perspective. So efficiency as the business owner, access as the clinician, because I want as many people as possible in this world to have access to mental health. But I also know that the more AI and tech orientated the world becomes, the more people are going to start craving human connection. human connection will always remain important because at the end of the day, we aren't robots. We are humans. And when somebody wants a human experience with the people and the clinicians in my practice, I'm going to ensure that it is a 10 out of 10 experience. So in terms of our competitive advantage out there, and when I say competitive advantage, not only competing with other group practice owners or with other solo practice owners, and I can keep my team busy, but also competing with platform providers like technology, AI providers. It's going to become more and more important. And I'm not saying those are threats. Those are really great additions to our market. But as the business owner, I also need to ensure that my brand quality and my brand image is such that my business remains the preferred provider amongst the referrers that want to refer to us and the clients that want to attend sessions within my practice. And I am here to ensure that that happens. So those are the three top reasons that popped into my head about why delivering a 10 out of 10 client session is incredibly important. So let's get stuck into it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to address this topic from three different perspectives: the client perspective, the clinician perspective, and the business owner perspective. So let's start with the client perspective. If I'm a client attending an allied health and or mental health private practice, what will make this 10 out of 10 client session for me as the client? I'm going to share three things under each of these perspectives. I'm sure there's way more and you're going to have your own ideas, which I encourage you to let me know. But again, these are three things that just immediately went, this is what's important for me as a client. And maybe this tells you a bit about me as well. So I'm going to say that, my personal filter comes in here as well. Number one, if I'm a client and I'm going to go and see a psychologist, particularly because I'm a psychology group practice owner and I'm a psychologist, or I'm going to see any other allied health professional, I want my freaking session to start on time. I can tell you nothing annoys me as much when a psychologist do not start their sessions on time. Let me say this. I feel, and this is my own values that's coming in here, I feel that it is incredibly disrespectful not to start a session on time, especially in the world of psychology. We all know that our sessions go for 50 minutes in general, of course, in general. You know that you've got a client booked at 10 o'clock. You need to start your session at 10 o'clock. That shows respect for that person that has taken time out of their day to book an appointment with you. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're probably thinking a couple of things. You might go, oh, well, 1 or 2 minutes late doesn't matter, does it? To me, it does. That's not a 10 out of 10 client session. That's maybe then a 9 out of 10 session. And you might go, I'm happy with a 9 out of 10 session, Gerda. Okay, well, good for you. I want a 10 out of 10 client session for every client that comes through our doors. Other thing you might be thinking is, particularly if you're in the world of psychology, you might go, but what do I do if there's a client that has become at risk and I'm running behind? You really need to ask yourself, if you are running behind, why is that the case? And how often do you run behind? Are you running behind at least 1 day a week? Well, that's a problem, my friend, because you should only be running behind if you actually had a client in session. Let's say your 9 o'clock client, you had them in session and they did what clients often do. It's like 2 minutes before you need to finish and they drop this big bomb that might indicate that they are at risk. And now you, as a great clinician, can't just let them leave. We know you can't do that. We know you now need to make sure that they're okay, which might mean that that person that's probably already sitting in the waiting room waiting for their 10 a.m. appointment, that you might need to start your appointment late now. Now, what I will say is that in private practice, we're not crisis centers. So again, this is not going to happen every day. This might happen not even every week. So again, if you are using this high risk or at risk clients as an excuse for running late, it's not an excuse. It should be the exception rather than the rule. But let's say you now have that client. You know what you do then? You walk yourself out of the consulting room to the waiting room. If you see your 10 a.m. client already sitting in the waiting room, you walk up to them, maybe just, crouch down, or if it's a couch, go and sit next to them and say, hey, good to see you. I'm mindful that we've got a 10 a.m. appointment booked in. I'm just going to need a little bit of extra time with my 9 a.m. client to make sure that they're okay before they leave. Is it all right with you if we start 5 to 10 minutes later today? I can tell you now that no client has ever said no to me when I speak to them like that in the 20 odd years that I've been a psychologist. Nobody. They actually find it incredibly respectful that I've asked their permission. Not that I need it, but I've actually acknowledged to them that I'm aware that you are here. You also matter. And when you are in crisis one day, I'm going to be making the time for you. And then what we do is we say, thank you so much. We go back and we finish up with the 9 a.m. client. If you need more than 20 minutes, in other words, into your 10 minutes after your 50-minute appointment and 10 minutes into the next appointment, if you need more than 20 minutes to manage that client, then you need to go and look at your risk management policy and process within your business, because you won't need that much. And then you will still start 10 past 10 with that client. You will give them their 15 minutes and you can start with the next client at 11. It is incredibly important to have good boundaries when you're running a clinical client session. So please start the appointments on time. Now, the other thing you might be thinking is, well, when I go to the doctor, they are always running late. I know, okay? But you also need to remember that you can't compare us as allied health to general health. The general practice system runs totally different than we do. And I, for one, even though I know all of that, I still get annoyed when I need to sit and wait at a GP surgery. But you know what I do? I do a couple of things. Sometimes, depending on what mood I'm in, I might call them up and say, hey, I've got a 3:30 appointment with Dr. So-and-so. I just wanted to check if they're running on time, or do you need me to come a little bit later? And reception actually finds that incredibly helpful. So that I might do from time to time. Or I'll go, okay, I'm going to the GP. I know they're normally late. Totally get why and understand how they operate. So I'm going to take my laptop and I'm going to do some work whilst I'm there. I'm going to make sure my laptop is fully charged so I go prepared. But I do not expect and I do not want that to happen at a psychology business or allied health for that matter, because we aren't general practice, totally different environment. So please, you need to be on time, because that is what your client is going to want. And you want to show that respect for them. That's the first one. Second thing, from a client perspective, if I'm coming in to see you, for this to be a 10 out of 10 client session for me, I want us to actually talk what I want to talk about. So I want to know that my agenda for our session today is going to get attention. In other words, I want to leave the client appointment feeling like you've actually listened to what I had to say, that you actually allowed me to talk about what I wanted to talk about. And during this session, I felt understood and I didn't feel judged at any point in time. So that is what is a 10 out of 10 session for me as a client in terms of that emotional experience that I have when I'm there. I want to know that what I'm bringing to the table during today's session is considered important by you and that you're going to deal with it accordingly. And then the third thing from a client perspective is what I refer to as my before and after emotional state. So I want to know as a client, when I leave the session, I want to feel better than what I did when I walked into that session. Now, you might go, oh, well, Gerda, that's really hard if you're a psychologist doing trauma work and there was processing and you spoke about really difficult things. I would argue that even if it's a really tricky session, that people still feel better afterwards if you structure your session appropriately. If you start the session with, this is what we're doing today, you do and you deliver your intervention and you put that bow on it again at the end and go, so this is what we've did today and this is why this matters. For clients really to see the progress, for them to understand what did I just experience. So that educational piece is also incredibly important. So that as a client, I need to know that I am better off now, 15 minutes later, than what I was when I walked in here at 10 a.m. Now, if you're a child and adolescent psychologist or a pediatric clinician, you might go, oh, but I work with kids. I'm not sure that kids have got the cognitive ability to have that understanding. But this is where you need to speak to the parents. Parents are incredibly important as part of the service that you deliver. So when you work with children and adolescents, yes, your client is the kiddo that's in session, but the client is also the parents, their legal guardians, their primary caregivers. So this is where you need to ensure that you have conversations with them, right? So I always encourage our child and adolescent psychologists to always speak to the parents before the session starts. Even though, and a lot of child psychologists will tell me, oh, I've asked the parents in the waiting room, did you want to catch up today? And the parent would go, no, we're all good. It's like, no, that's not how you do it. Because 9 out of 10 times, they're just going to go, no, it's all good. So you don't ask that question in the waiting room. You need to make it part of your process that the parents go into the session, they sit down on the couch or on the chairs, whatever you've got, and you ask the question in there. And if they go, no, there's no issues, you ask at least another 1, 2, or 3 prompting questions to really get what has been happening. Because sometimes parents forget things. You know, it's really hard being a parent. There's so many things that you carry in your head all at the same time. And then you still have a job and you've got all these responsibilities. Sometimes you forget and you need a bit of prompting and reminders to go, oh, this actually happened, right? But it was like 2 days after the last session, which was like, 10 days ago, and I almost just forgot about it, but thanks for asking and bringing it up. So you have to ask. And even if the parents doesn't have anything, then you go, all right, that's really great to hear. So this is what we're going to be doing today. How does that sound? Parents go, great. And then you walk them out. And then at the end of the session, once you've spent the time with the child, you bring the parents back into the appointment and you go, so this is what we did today. Because maybe sometimes you do something completely different based on what actually then happened and transpired in that appointment. You go, so this is what we did today, and this is why that was important. This is why this matters. And this is what I need you as a parent to be mindful of when you take little Johnny home. And that is how you ensure that you've ticked this before and after box for child and adolescent clients. You do it by focusing on the parents. So that is from the client perspective. For me to walk away feeling I had a 10 out of 10 session, I want you to start my appointment on time. I want you to address my agenda for the day. And even if I go in there with no agenda, I want to feel listened to, understood, and not judged. And I want to feel better leaving than when I did when I walked into this appointment. Next, we're going to look at this from the clinician perspective. So if I'm the helping professional, the psychologist, the occupational therapist, insert whatever your clinician title is, how do I know that I have delivered a 10 out of 10 client session? First of the 3 things, so again, I'm going to share with you my 3 thoughts on this. Number 1, did I provide the 3 things that the client wants? The stuff that we've just discussed from the client perspective. So did I actually start the session on time? Did I ensure that I addressed the agenda that the client came into the session with? And did the client feel better when they left the appointment than when they started the appointment? Okay, that's the first thing I need to be able to go, yes, I've addressed those 3 things. Second thing, from a clinician perspective, whilst doing the three things that's important to the client, did I still ensure that we as a client clinician team, did I ensure that we were working towards the treatment goals that the client told me they had when they started sessions? Because we all know that sometimes it's very easy for clients to go down a rabbit hole, and sometimes we need to go down the rabbit hole with them. Sometimes there is stuff that's happened, new crises that has popped up that needs to be addressed. But at the end of the day, the clinician, me as the clinician, I'm the navigator here. It is my job to remember, what are we working towards again? And maybe from time to time, we need to have that discussion and go, is that still what we're working towards? Or has the destination changed? So it's really important when clients can get caught up in their day-to-day lives for us to be there in their day-to-day lives, give them the skills and the strategies to manage it, to problem solve, to deal with it, sometimes walk away from it, whatever is relevant, but still then being able to take them out from that and go, okay, is this still aligned with those bigger goals that you had when you started? Remember when we had that first appointment and we discussed why it is that you've decided to come in? Is this aligned? Is what we're working on today going to move us closer to getting to that place? Because at the end of the day, we do not want clients to be in sessions for 20 years because we just stay stuck in the day-to-day stuff with them. And I know, again, if you work in the child and adolescent space, depending on the presenting problem, sometimes that is the case. But ultimately, people need to get better. Ultimately, people want to get better. And it's only when we can keep our eye on the goal that we can get there. Sometimes, it takes a long time. Some people get there sooner than others, and that is okay. But it's really about respecting the goals, making sure that we talk about that. And for me as a clinician, to also fulfill my role as the navigator, that's going to get us there. Also, very importantly, ensuring that as we work towards those treatment goals, we do so in a best practice, evidence-based manner. Not only that, it also needs to be trauma-informed. And if you work with neurodiverse clients, it needs to be neurodiversity affirming care. So you need to put all of this through the filter of the type of disciplines you're in and the type of work that you do, in terms of what is the entire framework within which I need to operate. And every session needs to be aligned to that, because ultimately it's my job as the clinician to act as the navigator and to get us there in a informed, affirming, safe manner that is going to allow the client to achieve the goals that they are here to achieve. The third thing that I will ask myself as a clinician, if I wanted to determine whether I'm providing a 10 out of 10 client session, is, did my client feel seen and heard within this appointment? Which to me goes deeper to point number 2 within the client perspective, where we said, have you addressed the client's agenda? Did they feel listened to, understood, and was it done within a non-judgmental environment? I feel that this goes even deeper than that, because I want to know, did my client truly feel seen and heard in here? Because a lot of times I find clinicians just tick boxes in sessions, especially if they're doing very manualized treatment, for example. And it's really important to meet the client where they're at. And I'll give you a personal example of this, which I don't do that often. I give a lot of personal examples as a business owner, but not so much as a human. But, me, I'm a very stoic person, let's say that. I'm of a South African background. We are really hard workers. We've got a lot of persistence. There's a lot of determination and grit, and we just push through. And I'm sure a lot of Aussies can relate to that as well. But that's the cultural background and the upbringing that I had. And then on top of that, I'm also a psychologist, which means I do have a lot of skills. I have a lot of coping mechanisms. It also means that I'm really good at compartmentalizing, right? I'm really good at masking when I need to. And all of that means that as a human, I'm really good at containing my emotions, but sometimes that's not helpful. And I clearly remember probably one of the hardest times in my life from a personal emotional perspective was after my last child was born. This was in 2011. So Ethan was born in March 2011, and I was due to open up my second practice in September 2011. So it was a really busy time in the world of business. My practice manager also resigned 10 days after Ethan was born. And I thought I had all my ducks in a row. I spent like 6, 8 months leading up to his birth, really getting her ready to manage the practice in my absence. I did not have a principal psychologist at that time because this was pre any business coaching. Remember, I only discovered that there was a thing called business coaching in January of 2012, which changed my life, of course. So this was pre all of that. So I had a baby, had 2 other young kids, had my third baby, practice manager resigned 10 days in, was due to open up a second 4-room practice in September in a couple of months. Oh my golly. It was not a good time. And I remember going in and seeing my clinical supervisor in Brisbane, Catherine. And that day was one of my ugly crying days. I didn't cry a lot in supervision because, like I said, I'm a very stoic person. I'm good at masking my emotions and keeping it all contained. And I just couldn't do it any longer. And I just started bawling, ugly crying in that session. And, babies feel the energy and the vibe of their parents. And Ethan was a couple of weeks old. He was sitting in one of those carry things that you carry your baby in, the little mini car chairs that you can also carry around. And he started crying, and I was just about to pull myself all back together again so that I could get him out and give him some care and attention. And Catherine and she probably won't even remember that she did this. She just went, "No, I've got him. I've got him." She took him out of the seat, she picked him up, and she consoled him. And I just cried even harder after that. And I can still even feel the emotion in my chest right now. And we're talking like it will be 15 years ago in March this year. He's turning 15 in 2026. And I just felt so seen in that moment because somebody noted that I needed help. Golly, I was just talking about how stoic I am, but the body remembers, and it meant so much to me that I didn't have to be the strong person in that moment. She didn't say anything to make me feel better. She just let me cry, but she took over consoling my baby so that I could just let out what I needed to let out. And that meant so much to me, so much. And that it was a moment that I realized that this is what it means to make a client feel seen and feel heard. So I'll just take a moment to pull myself back together. I'm not crying at all. No, I'm not. But it's just emotional thinking back because it's like I'm back in that room with her when I think about it, when I recount it. I'm back in the room. And that is how impactful that was for me 15 years ago. And imagine doing something like that for a client. And you probably don't even know that you're doing it. Because I can tell you she's probably forgotten all about it. But it is so important for a client. So just ask yourself, am I really allowing clients to be heard and to be seen? Because doing that is an incredible, powerful gift that you can gift to a client. And the ripple effect of that in their world, in their life, will still be felt 15 years later, maybe even longer. Last but most certainly not least, let's talk about the business owner perspective. As the owner of the business, how do I know that we've delivered a 10 out of 10 client session? Well, maybe you've guessed it. As a business owner, I want to make sure that we've ticked all three of the boxes that we discussed as part of the client perspective. Secondly, I want to make sure that we've ticked all of the three boxes we've just discussed from a clinician perspective. So that is 6 things already from 3 from a client, 3 from a clinician perspective that needed to be done. So that's the first thing I want to make sure has occurred. Then, second thing, and I'm going to call this compliance. Has all the compliance items been completed for this specific session? Because yes, that process and experience within the session is important, but just as important is the accompanying compliance work that needs to happen. Case in point, case notes. I shudder when I think about the amount of clinicians that either just doesn't do proper case notes or doesn't do it on time. And yes, we are now in the world of AI, and there's so many options for AI note-taking, but I can tell you not even a quarter of the clinicians out there has taken this up because change is slow. You're always going to have your early adopters, and those are the people who's like, yeah, I'm using it. It's amazing. It's life-changing. It's so more efficient, all of the things, and there's pros and cons to all of that stuff. And AI, yes, it can save you a lot of time. I will say that, but you still need to put your eye over it. I, for one, don't just trust that AI is going to do it perfectly every time. Even if you use an amazing AI note-taking software, after the appointment, you still need to go through it and make sure that that's an accurate reflection of what was discussed in session, because AI ain't going to be sitting in the witness box one day, right? If your notes get subpoenaed, you can't say, oh, well, that's what the AI software recorded. That's not on me. No, sorry, it's on you. You're the individual with the registration. And even if you were an employee, the way that it works in Australia is that you are being held responsible for it because it's your Medicare provider number. It's your registration number under APRA, okay? So you need to make sure that whatever gets notated, and before that case note gets locked in on your software, that your eyes have gone through it and that you are standing behind it 100%. But there are still a lot of people that sometimes take weeks before they write up their case notes. I don't know how people do that. That's just crazy to me. Even in the days of paper files, if I had that 10 o'clock appointment, it would finish at 10:50. And by the time I walk out to get my 11 o'clock appointment, I'll be walking out with my hard copy file, giving it to reception, and getting my client walking back in. Case notes all done. No problemo. We can do it. And if people are struggling with that, then we need to really start looking at why. Because then there's a process issue there that's not working. Because maintaining and writing case notes is a skill that can be learned. Don't assume people have it because you would go, oh, that's a really basic skill. No, never assume. Basics is incredibly important, probably more important than the more fancy stuff that we teach our clinicians. So as a business owner, I need to make sure my team knows how to write good case notes in a time-efficient manner. Very important. So has the case notes happened? If it was a 6 session under Medicare, has the report been completed? Has it gone off to the doctor? What is those communication processes that is related to this specific session that we've just had today? If it was a 6 session, we probably also needed to do some post-intervention assessments. Did that happen? Did we give the adult client a DAS-42 to do? Did we give the child client's parents and the child, depending on the age, a strength and difficulties questionnaire? Insert whatever type of assessments you use within your practice as part of your pre- and post-intervention outcome data. Okay, those things need to happen. So has the compliance items related to this specific appointment occurred? And also, very importantly, linked to that, other compliance items are stuff such as billing. Have we billed for this appointment? If it's an NDIS client, is it a work cover client? Has the invoices been sent off? That also needs to occur. So for me as a business owner, that's incredibly important because I can't pay my people and my bills if we've not billed accordingly. So from a business owner perspective, that is important for me to go. This was a 10 out of 10 client appointment, because we can do all the amazing work in the world, but if we don't get paid, we're going to have to close our doors and then we can't do any of it. And then number 3, from a business perspective, is that the client confirm their next appointment. I don't know how you do it at your practice, but we generally have appointments pre-booked. So it's not about that the client book another appointment. And if you're not pre-booking, well, you need to address that. But we always have at least 4 to 6 minimum appointments pre-booked for our clients. But I can have pre-booked appointments, but did I actually confirm as a client that I'm coming back? And I want that process to be occurring at 2 levels. First, in the clinician appointment, the clinician needs to have a conversation with a client to confirm, okay, am I seeing you next week? Am I seeing you in 2 weeks' time? Because we've got an appointment booked in, but are you coming in? It's that reaffirming of that commitment. Has that occurred? And has that also occurred again at the front desk? Because if you've got an in-person clinic, your clinician should be walking the client out, handing them over to reception. Even though you might do pre-billing like we do at our practice and the client's already been billed 2 days out from their appointment, even though you may already have that process in place where the client always has 4 to 6 appointments pre-booked, we are still handing over that client. Remember, we're talking 10 out of 10 client session experience here. We're handing them over for reception to again confirmed. Okay, we're just confirming your next appointment. Will you be there? It's reaffirming commitment. Because remember, you probably have a cancellation, no-show, late cancellation policy. We always want to make sure that the clients have got ample time to confirm or decline that they're coming or not. Have they considered what's happening in their life at that point in time? Is it school holidays and they'd forgotten? What's happening at work? Are they actually traveling and they've forgotten that that popped up yesterday? That is really important, getting that reconfirmation that they will be there at the next appointment. Because at the end of the day, if I, as a practice owner, were running after the client and going, hey, before you leave, and walked out the front door, how many stars do you give us for today? I want them to go 5 stars. And these are all the things that's going to lead to a client giving you 5 stars, even though you're not going to officially ask them that. But if you were to, you want to get 5 stars, not bronze, not silver, 5 gold stars. And I know we don't want to be perfectionists here, right? But we need to know, what are we working towards? Are we not going to get everything right always? I know that. I'm a recovering perfectionist. Most of us are. But it's like there needs to be this ongoing endeavor to be better, to be chasing this 10 out of 10 client session. And when we are meeting these criteria, we should also be celebrating it. We should be celebrating that, yes, I'm achieving these things. Yes, we are delivering this. And this is what makes a great allied health business. So ask yourself, are you delivering this within your practice? Do you know whether these things are actually happening? How do you know? What do you need to do for you to know? How am I tracking this? How am I communicating this? What is the frameworks that I have back at the practice to allow this to occur? Because ultimately, it is your job as the business owner to ensure that these things are happening. Thank you so very much for tuning in. And as always, remember that I am here to help you build a practice you can't stop smiling about.